Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar, we're going to be discussing income tax preparation for e-commerce, and in particular how bookkeepers and CPAs can work better together, during which I'm sure we can all agree is a trying time. I'm actually really excited for this topic as I see questions come up all the time in accountant and bookkeeper communities around, how to manage this relationship. So I am Ellen and I'll be your host today. I run partner marketing at A2X. I've been at A2X coming up 4 years. And during this time, I've had the pleasure of working with lots of accountants and bookkeepers at all stages of their e-commerce accounting journey. I look after the partner program. So this is a program for accountants and bookkeepers. There's currently around over 1,000 in this program. And we've also got Jeremy Allen, who is our expert on today's topic. Jeremy is the CEO and founder of Ecom CPA. Jeremy has lots of experience working with internal bookkeepers and external bookkeepers, so he has lots of great insight to offer us. We also have Sarah Burns, who is accounting manager at Ecom CPA, so who's kind of lurking, but she is here. And we also have Jared Randall, who's the partner consultant at Xero. And I will be your host. Cool. All right, just some basic housekeeping before we get started. You'll notice this is recorded on Zoom and we will send this to you afterwards. And if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to ask them. And if they're relevant, I'll try and jump in and get those answered. Otherwise, we will get to those at the end. All righty, cool. So on the agenda today, we'll be discussing why e-commerce bookkeeping and tax is unique. We'll be discussing the bookkeeper and CPA relationship during tax time. And we'll also be discussing how bookkeepers and CPAs can work better together. And then we'll have questions and answers at the end. All right. So e-commerce is growing. It's an industry that we've seen growing for the past few years quite rapidly. And by 2024, retail e-commerce sales will surpass $5.5 trillion US, and it will account for 22% of retail sales. So e-commerce bookkeeping and tax will likely become the fastest growing niche for many practices. And I'm sure, Jeremy, you can add here, have you seen a lot of growth in the e-commerce space in your company?
Yep. Yeah. We've consistently more than doubled since we started. And so obviously, and most of my other peers in the space are also experiencing tremendous growth. So it's an exciting time to be in e-commerce, and I think it will be going forward as well.
Cool. Sorry. Awesome. So there's accurate e-commerce is super valuable for sellers. Accurate e-commerce accounting, super valuable for sellers over and above compliance. So obviously they do want to be confident that they're compliant, but they also, it goes further than that. With accurate e-commerce accounting, that needs to make sure they're paying the right tax. It can help them know if they're profitable. It also makes them more attractive to buyers. In fact, if an e-commerce business is even thinking about selling their business, they need to have accurate accrual accounting. It's less risk if they've got those accurate books, and also they have that insight into how they're performing. And what do you think here, Jeremy? Have you seen, over and above compliance, what do you think accurate e-commerce accounting can do for sellers?
Yeah, I think you talked about on the sell side. So if you're going to sell your business, I mean, most e-commerce businesses go between 3 and 10x EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings. So if there's an error in your books, you're talking about a 3 to 10 times impact from not having your books in order. So on that front, I think it's a huge. I've seen a lot of money missed out because the books weren't accurate. So and then as we're expected to be headed into a recession. If you don't know your numbers, then I think it will be a very trying time for e-commerce businesses who don't know how they're doing financially.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So e-commerce bookkeeping and tax is complex, and the more that these e-commerce businesses are selling, it just increases in complexity. Like, it doesn't get any easier. And so why is this? So if you have clients who are e-commerce businesses, you will recognize this diagram on the left here, and it is just rows and rows and rows of transactions. And so what happens is e-commerce businesses receive these net deposits into their bank account, and they can't see any breakdown of what is happening. And quite often these deposits span over 2 months. And so it does actually turn into a bit of a guessing game. And so businesses can kind of have two options here. They can reconcile this net deposit as is, and they've got no categorization of what's happening, or they can spend hours combing through this data to try and make sense of it. Both kind of leave space for error and super time consuming. So this is an example of what you would see in Xero versus what is actually happening kind of behind the scenes. So a Shopify seller might receive this net deposit here of $15,072. And if they were to reconcile as is, they would miss out on all of this information. And also you'll see they'll be getting their income figures very wrong, as well as lumping in liabilities, which shouldn't even be in the profit and loss, should be well over into the balance sheet. So this is kind of the information that A2X finds. It will break down all of those line items. And then this is the same with an Amazon. In fact, Amazon is even crazier. They have over 400 different events that they're tracking, and sellers need to know what these are. So with this e-commerce, it gets even more complex, right? You've got bookkeeping and the CPA relationships hard to manage. Then you add e-commerce into the mix, you add tax into the mix, and there comes a greater need for processes, technology, and collaboration. So having your processes right is incredibly important, and we'll be touching on processes specific to income tax today. But we also, each month, we have the A2X content team produces some checklists that are super important and can be really helpful for your your accounting and bookkeeping practice. And we'll be sending these with the video at the end as well. But as well as kind of having your processes straight, technology is also super important. So I'm going to hand over to Jared now, who is going to cover the technology piece.
Hello, everyone. Again, Jared from Xero. I'm so stoked to be on here today with our counterparts, A2X. And, technology keeps changing, and time keeps passing. It passes quicker and quicker, right? And, so it's not novel. I think everyone on here probably has somewhat of an idea of what it means to integrate with other apps, right? If you're in e-commerce, you're probably thinking about this. And so, it's worth noting and calling out here, what you're seeing in front of you is the Xero App Store. And this is something that really sets Xero apart as an accounting solution for the e-commerce businesses and the accountants and bookkeepers that serve them. So if you use Xero for your clients, you have access to this app store. And here you can choose from over 1,000 third-party apps that integrate with Xero. Of course, you can search by a specific app, browse by the function or the industry. Obviously, today we're talking about e-commerce, and A2X is one of our top-rated apps for the e-commerce business. And you've already probably seen a little bit why, taking the complex and the messy into a format that can be digested and used in an accounting solution, right? So again, just to call out on kind of the technology piece of this whole thing, Xero, we don't try to be all things. We see ourselves and want to be kind of the hub, in the middle of a business's workflow. And, we want to focus on being the most beautiful accounting solution. And that's where our attention is going to go. And by having an open API and integrating with the best apps for e-commerce, we're able to actually empower the accountants and bookkeepers beyond being that accounting solution. So that's part of who we are and part of what we want to do. And we're looking to reinforce the value that you bring to your clients, to give you access to the full suite of the workflow automation tools. And Xero even has like an app advisory certification for our partners. And that just kind of helps further support and position you to your clients. So again, accountants and bookkeepers, y'all are in the driver's seat. You're the ones that can help actually take the stress and complexity out of the equation of the e-commerce accounting. And that's what we're here to do. Xero, we show up and we're supporting the accountant and bookkeeper collaboration, because we know that when that happens, the more engaged the small businesses can be with those, everyone's going to win. The businesses are going to succeed and the firms are going to succeed.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Jared. So further to this technology piece, and there are some amazing apps in the App Store, we are going to discuss the A2X Xero integration and how this can solve the difficult issues that e-commerce businesses face. But before we kind of get into that, I would love to hear from you, Jeremy, kind of about your world pre-A2X and how you managed that before technology came along to simplify this all.
Sure. So I basically started on my e-commerce accounting journey in 2015. And at the time, I was just trying to figure out how e-commerce accounting worked. I saw the writing on the wall that e-commerce was going to be one of the fastest growing industries. So I figured I'm going to double down on it and figure out how this works. And back in that time, there was an integration. I think it was bold integration between Shopify and Xero, and it would push every single order over into Xero. And so I had a client that was growing really fast. It was an apparel company. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try and hook this integration up. And it pushed hundreds of thousands of invoices into Xero and just made a huge mess of my clients' books. And kind of the strategy at that time, when I didn't know about A2X, was just to kind of plug the difference to a clearing account, or just kind of hope that our numbers would tie out, once we reconciled everything. And so it wasn't real, the level of precision was lacking. And, thankfully stumbled upon A2X. And, really, I think I only had a few clients at that time. So using, the automation of A2X, I was able to take on a bunch more clients as well. And so it really changed the game for me as far as being precise in the accounting, as well as not spending hours trying to figure out, whether this order was a return or whatever, of those 10,000 invoices where it belonged on my financials. So, that's kind of some backstory on how A2X has impacted our practice.
Yeah, amazing. So it takes a guessing game into confidence,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we're all after. Awesome. So there you go. I'll just go pass over to you now, Jeremy.
Yeah. So, I think, Ellen, you talked about this pretty well. It basically, for taxes as well, it's really important that your sales get grossed up. So if you, Amazon's going to, in this example, Amazon's going to deposit roughly $83,000 into your bank. If you just code that to your sales line, then essentially you're underreporting your gross sales. And so, as everyone knows who does taxes, the IRS loves 1099K matching to the sales, especially in an audit. They will do that. We've had some clients that have automated, the IRS sends out automated notices saying, you've underreported your total sales, and then they just outright assess, additional taxes on that amount. So, you're talking, let's see, so on this one, the gross sales is 145,000. So, if you just booked your net deposit, you're going to be, whatever that is, I don't have my calculator, 50 plus thousand short on your gross sales. So, ideally, as a tax preparer, we want to limit our interaction with the IRS as much as possible and hedge any risk. There's nothing wrong, if there was an audit, I think you could still justify it, but who wants to, incur that cost and time? So that's why reporting the gross sales and associated expenses is important from the tax side of it.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. And then it's just, I love this part because before I mentioned you'd have, I don't know, each deposit might be 5,000 invoices. So in the old days, you'd have to go through and somehow match that deposit up to all those invoices. Here, it's like, once you approve the A2X invoice, it matches right up to the bank side. So, I mean, you can just speed right through that. All right, so yeah, I wanted to get more into the tax side of it. So just talking about the collaboration between bookkeepers and CPAs, during tax time. So go to the next slide. And I wanted to kind of start with, what are some of the nuances of income taxes for e-commerce businesses? So I think the first one that there's a ton of confusion on, and a wide array of practice, is the state income tax nexus. So, if you've been in e-commerce, the sales tax side of it, with the Wayfair decision, made it overly complicated and cumbersome for businesses, especially outside of Amazon. So brands that have Shopify stores that don't have a third-party marketplace to collect the tax. The state income tax side is also somewhat complex in that each state has their own nexus thresholds. You have some states that are adopting economic nexus. So, over a certain dollar amount of sales into that state. You have the state of California that is being overly aggressive and saying, they're saying, you sell one piece of inventory into my state, I'm going to charge you with the franchise tax. So you got a wide practice of things happening on the state side when it comes to nexus. So the question is, the clients always ask, I'm a $5 million business. I'm in my state. I use a 3PL. What state should I file in? And, if you look across CPAs, you might get a bunch of different answers, especially if someone doesn't specialize in the e-commerce side. So I think, as we have a possible recession, the states are going to be looking for income. And I think the state income tax compliance side will be heavily scrutinized by the state. So yeah, and then, inventory obviously is is a big pain point for e-commerce businesses. And, on the tax side, obviously it impacts the bottom line significantly through cost of goods sold. So if a client's inventory is overstated or understated, then the net income, which is subject to taxation, will vary. And so, we're always looking at the accuracy of inventory and the accounting for that. So, and then finally, cash versus accrual accounting. So, a lot of our clients, are doing accrual accounting, and then for tax purposes, it's very well possible that you could be on the cash basis up to $25 million in annual gross revenue. So, for book purposes, you could be on accrual, and then for tax, you could be on cash. And so there's some decisions there to be made on what's most favorable for the client. So those are some of the the nuances for e-commerce income taxes. So so I wanted to just kind of talk about head on, why there's always kind of this beef between bookkeepers and CPAs that I see, or, when I say CPAs, I mean EAs, anyone who's doing the taxes. There's kind of this little battle that I feel like happens. We do the accounting and taxes for clients, but we also have, partners outside that we work with. And we actually had some of these collaboration problems within our own team. And so I'll share kind of some things that we've used to work through that. And so, yeah, everyone's very busy with the work that they're doing. And so I think that sometimes when the clients feel this pressure that they have to manage their bookkeeper and their CPA. And so I've had some clients say, like, why do I even have the two of you? You guys should be working together, things like that. And so, the last thing we want to do is have our clients manage us. We want to be, serving them and managing them, saving them time, which is what they engage with us for. So, on the bookkeeper side, they're often frustrated with CPAs for making top level adjustments, booking journal entries without really inquiring with the bookkeeper as to why they're making these adjustments. And then, on the CPA side, or, tax preparer side, they're frustrated because changes were made to the prior year books without, letting them know, or they just, something on the balance sheet may not make sense. And so, the CPA, because they're time strapped, is forced to book top level adjustments. So yeah, so those are some of the challenges. If you're in one of those roles, you've probably faced something like that on here. All right, so as is the case with most things in business, clear, open, and consistent communication really is the answer. I think, as accountants, it's not everyone is well versed in communication, and so we try and be purposeful with our communication. So let's talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to talk about some of our best practices that we've had a lot of success on with solving some of these pain points. And so the first one is at tax time. And so one thing I forgot to mention is that we actually work with more external bookkeepers than we do, our internal accounting team. So, we try and make before tax time, either through tax planning or, as once the books are closed. I think it's a really good time to connect with, with the CPA and the bookkeeper together, talk about key events. Sometimes having the client is also beneficial, since the bookkeeper may not know kind of the ins and outs or some one-off things that happened during the year, but having a quick discussion on what happened during the year, and then is there any issues that might impact the tax return. So just having a quick conversation before the taxes are started usually makes a ton of headache and back and forth, prevents the headache and back and forth that can happen during tax time. And then this is one where we've definitely focused on a lot. So whoever prepares the taxes should work with the bookkeeper to align on the journal entries being made and why they're being made. And then, if you're making a topside entry to the books, it's usually correcting some sort of error or some account that doesn't line up. And so working with the bookkeeper to make sure that doesn't happen again, that's been one of the keys to saving us time, as well as saving the bookkeeper time, making the bookkeeper look really good too, because they don't, we're not fixing any mistakes that we see. So one thing that we've put together, which we've been rolling out to our external bookkeeping accounting partners, is this ready for tax prep checklist. And so I think we're going to send this out after this presentation. So it's a really nice tool. It's real simple. And then that ensures that, the bookkeeper and the CPA are on the same page and marching towards providing a great seamless experience for the client. So I'll just run through a couple of those questions right here next. So, I mean, they're just, some of them seem like common sense to some of y'all, but, you never, sometimes you never know what you're going to get on the book side. So, I think I can just run through maybe a couple of these, and then, the first one, are all balance sheet accounts reconciled? I think that's really important. Not only the bank accounts, but you have credit cards, any loans, anything on the balance sheet should be tied out to some supporting documentation. And that really ensures that the financials have a high level of accuracy. So this second one, I think, is where there's a lot of back and forth that can happen between bookkeepers and CPAs. So, the prior year, for tax purposes, depending on the type of entity, if it's a corporation or a partnership, then you're going to have typically the balance sheet is reported to the IRS. And so we're going to, for tax, we always make sure that the balance sheet rolls between one year to the next. And so if there's a change on the books and our balance sheets, prior year balance sheets don't line up and retained earnings doesn't line up, then then we're typically going to have to make an adjustment in order to make sure it flows on the tax return. And so I'm not saying that the bookkeeper needs to make an entry to make it line up, but working with the tax preparer to record that entry and agree on it together is usually the best practice. So let's see some other things. Yeah, I think the last point on there, if there are any complex transactions, like they acquired a new brand or they acquired a new business, there's a merger, changes in ownership, any insight, that any information you as a bookkeeper have, it's always helpful to translate that to the tax preparer so they don't miss out on anything. So, this is a real quick checklist we give to our external partners in order to, help the tax prep process be really smooth, as well as, facilitate a good communication between the bookkeeper and the CPA. So we'll provide this after the call as well.
Cool. How do you find the bookkeepers receive this kind of checklist?
I think most people like it because then it's just not, it's tangible, it's easy, it's pretty quick. I think what is it now? It's just 9 quick questions to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And it ensures that we as a tax team don't have to come back and ask for more information. So
cool. Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. It's super helpful. And I'm sure when everyone gets this checklist after this webinar, they can all put it to use in their practices. So we do have a few questions that have come through at the Q&A, and I also have some questions that I've gathered from the community. As I mentioned, I see this topic come up a lot. Okay, I can see, Jared, you've actually answered that there is a certification for bookkeepers for Xero. But a question for Jeremy is, how many QBO bookkeeping certified people do you have on the team? How many Xero certified people do you have on your team?
Sarah, do you know the number?
I think we have.
I think it's like 8 or 9.
Yeah, but not everybody
Xeros
is certified in both QuickBooks and Xero. Okay. Usually that's something we implement as soon as we bring on new people, is we get them certified. People usually come certified in either or, though, that we hire.
Awesome. So Carol has asked, does an A2X integrate with QuickBooks Desktop and Shopify? So yes, A2X does integrate with Shopify. It's one of our main e-commerce platforms. And we also do have an integration with QuickBooks Desktop. It is a custom integration. So it's kind of, it's a slightly different, to the Xero QuickBooks integration. Cool. How to get the correct reports from Amazon, etc., inventory by shipping warehouse. Oh, Jeremy, I'll put that over to you.
How to get it by warehouse?
Correct reports from Amazon.
Yeah, I think A2X has a what is it called? One of the tabs in the software has it has the inventory reporting. I forgot which.
Are you trying to find the report?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the tab. You can move to the next.
No, that's all good. Okay, well then maybe I can move on to some of these questions that I've seen in the community, and also Jared, you might actually have some insight into this as well. But what do you do when your CPA or your bookkeeper isn't willing to kind of embrace automation or as in technology?
Well, no, I'll give some commentary. I mean, we all know kind of the why behind some of that, like some of the resistance. Years ago, it may have been cost and stuff, and now, like, of course, there's cost, but it cannot honestly be app overload, as a lot of people, get into, and they're like, well, I spent the other day researching, and I've, basically have more questions than answers now in terms of like what I should use for my clients, what I should recommend. And I think, when it comes down to it is just, we, as I kind of talked about earlier, like empowering the accountants and bookkeepers. Look, it's about saving time. It's about increasing the quality of what you do. And I think, if for kind of the question of like, if you're in the small business seat and you're saying, hey, they won't embrace automation, or if you're like, say you're the bookkeeper and you do, but you're kind of working in tandem with an accountant that does the tax side and they don't, all you can do is just sort of, you're advocating for the client for the client experience. And I can even, anecdotally, before I came to Xero, I actually had a small practice myself. I did not specialize in e-commerce for my practice, but I did have a client that sort of, I was the day-to-day and kind of the outsourced bookkeeping component. And they were like an online marketplace for auto parts, actually. And we had the tax, like there was another firm that just did the taxes. I didn't want to deal with the taxes. And so we had a good relationship, but this was very much the story, right? It was, they didn't like, I could talk about Xero, I could talk about the apps, I could talk about sort of what this fee is and that. And they even there, they would have a hard time because again, they were just focused on the taxes. But what you do is make sure you're highlighting and advocating for the client and saying, everyone needs to understand the why behind what they do and the why behind the questions they're asking. Why do they want to move further along the technology spectrum, to save time? So, we all want the business to succeed. Like, this is where we can lean in and really help show, there's not just one solution for everything, but our awareness of knowing what's going on and the why can really help go a long way with small business clients. And it goes a long way in your relationship with like the accounting counterparts as well.
Yeah, cool. Next question is, what do you do when your bookkeeper and or CPA are consistently missing deadlines? Is this something that you have seen, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think, especially with the tax law changes that came through and the complexity of the tax code, I think, and especially on the bookkeeping side, if there's a cleanup, say the client didn't do their books for the year and there's a cleanup, so sometimes that takes a while. And so I think, just like we talked about before, communication is the key on those types of things. So, if things are behind, then obviously, I think it's prudent to ask why and what's the plan to get, to move things forward. So I think, communication is the answer to that question. There was a question regarding the the inventory reporting by state for Amazon. So A2X has a feature, and it's the inventory tab. It has a locations tracking, and so that's how you can see the inventory by state. I think someone asked that in the question.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
So.
All right, we also have a couple of questions related to A2X coming up as well. So is there an easy way to pull a report from A2X for sales tax by state that shows total sales and total tax? Shopify doesn't have it this clear, so that we do know that kind of.
Yeah, so for sales tax, we primarily use Avalara for the clients that we do sales tax compliance for. So Avalara hooks in, to the various channels, and then we'll pull in that data to their system to calculate it in there. I think some other ones that people use are TaxJar. There's a few other ones that people use for kind of managing that sales tax side, but I haven't really used A2X for the sales tax side of it. I don't know if if you have any insight on that, Ellen.
Yeah, A2X does take the sales, like breaks down the sales tax, so takes it out of that net deposit, which is what you want to do, and puts it into a liability account where it belongs. But you do need to obviously break that out by state where you need to report. So cool. Jeremy, do you, I'll ask you this as well. What are the major merchant accounts that will have a report with the gross sales and fees? So there's Amazon, Shopify, PayPal. It's just kind of like eBay. Is it all e-commerce channels?
I mean, anytime you have a fee, Etsy is also part of that. What else? eBay, you have the same thing.
Walmart's a newer one.
Yeah, Walmart as well.
Those are all e-commerce channels that A2X integrates with and supports.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So A2X will do all that heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to figure it out. On the Shopify side, you have gateways too, which is used to be a huge pain point, but A2X, will push that to the specific gateway account. So
cool. Awesome. Hey, one more question around kind of the CPA bookkeeper relationship. And it is kind of a CPA who was discussing how he was consistently getting kind of books that were just incorrect and riddled with mistakes. And it was, really difficult. How would you handle that?
Yeah, so I think, our approach is to really, depending on what we find, we would try and talk with the bookkeeper and just kind of go through what we're seeing, try and build an understanding with the bookkeeper on what changes we like to see. If at the end of the day they're combative or not really understanding what we're saying, then we'll probably go talk to the client, because our allegiance is to the client to do good work and have books that are accurate. So that's typically our approach in that situation.
Cool. Yeah, so like the bookkeeper accounting relationship doesn't need to be, this like kind of butting heads all the time. And I do see this a lot, like when it's actually managed really well, it's actually a referral channel and a really great way to grow your business. Bookkeepers refer clients to CPAs, and CPAs refer clients back to bookkeepers. So definitely really helpful to embrace your checklist and try and work on that, and looking at processes, technology, collaboration, communication to, really strengthen that relationship and hopefully scale your own practice. So that is all the questions that I see here that have come through, but I did just want to thank you so much for your time, Jeremy, and also for the amazing resource that you've put together to help CPAs and bookkeepers. And we will send that to everyone alongside some other process checklists to help you out there. And thank you so much to Jared as well for coming along from Xero to talk to us more about that. And so don't forget to check out the Xero App Store and also the Xero certification for accountants and bookkeepers, which is also super helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.